So rearranging straight line equations into the form y equals mx plus c allows us to determine what the gradient and what the y-intercept is of a particular line, because we're not always given it like y equals 4x plus 5 so that we know that the gradient is 4 and the y-intercept is 0, 5. So let's have a look at an example. We want to rearrange 4x plus 2y minus 6 equals 0 into the form y equals mx plus c. Now, this is changing the subject of the formula to y. So it's the same processes, you're using the inverse processes in order to rearrange this equation to get the x terms and the numerical terms or the constant terms over to the right-hand side of your equal sign. And then you want to isolate y, so you're going to have to divide everything by the coefficient of y in order to get it in the format y equals mx plus c. So let's have a go at this. So we've got 4x, and I'm going to write the 2y in front because that's what I'm going to end up with. And I'm going to take away 6, and that equals 0. So I'm writing it in a slightly different format because I want the y term to be on its own. So I'm going to highlight that y because that's what I'm trying to get. Now, first of all, I need to get rid of the other terms that don't have a y in them. So I'm going to take away 4x from both sides, because that's the opposite of add 4x. And I'm also going to get rid of that take away 6, and so that's a plus 6. So I'm going to be left with 2y equals negative 4x plus 6. Now, I already said at the beginning that I want to isolate y on its own. So I want to divide both sides by 2. And that means I'm dividing everything on the right-hand side by 2. So I'm doing negative 4 divided by 2, and I'm doing 6 divided by 2. So that gives me y equals negative 2x and plus 3. And if I wanted to, I could determine that my gradient of this line is the negative 2, and that my y-intercept would be 0, 3. So example 2 is actually asking us to find the gradient and the y-intercept of the straight line. So it's not actually telling us that we need to rearrange it to y, but we know that if we want to get the gradient and the y-intercept, that our line has got to be in the format y equals mx plus c. And I'm going to write that y equals mx plus c up here to remind me that that is the format that I need to get this 15x minus 5y equals 10. So again, I'm going to rewrite it with the y term at the start. So I've got negative 5y, because remember, the sign in front of your term is the one that is dominant, and that's going to be plus 15x is going to equal 10. Now you can see my constant term is already on the right hand side, so I don't need to do anything with it at all. But what I do need to do is I need to get rid of that plus 15x from the left hand side to the right hand side, and I'm going to basically take away 15x from both sides. Now remember, I'm isolating that y term, so I'm going to end up with negative 5y equals, and I'm going to write it in that format y equals mx plus c, negative 15x plus 10. Now I want to isolate that y term, so I need to get rid of the negative 5 because it has to be a positive y, because when my y equals mx plus c, y is positive. So I'm going to divide both sides by negative 5. So I'm dividing everything on the right hand side by negative 5. And so that's going to give me y equals, and negative 15 divided by negative 5 is 3x, and 10 divided by negative 5 is negative 2. Now we need to go back to the original question. We've done our rearranging, but it's asking us to find the gradient. So the gradient is 3, and it's also asking us to find the y-intercept. So we know that c equals -2. And that means that the y-intercept is the coordinate 0, -2. So if we were sketching that line, it would be going through 0, -2 on the y-axis at a gradient of 3. So the final example, we've got the gradient and the y-intercept that we want to find of the straight line given by 16 minus 12x plus 8y equals 0. So again, let's write y equals mx plus c because we're dealing with straight lines, and that will give us an idea of what we're trying to do. We want to rearrange the subject to y. So let's write that term first. So we've got 8y, and then we're going to write plus 16 minus 12x equals 0. So what are we doing? We're isolating that y term. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get rid of that plus 16. So that's take away 16. And we want to get rid of that minus 2x. So we're going to add 2x. So we need to add the 2x onto this side. And I forgot to write the take away 16. So we've got 8y equals 2x take away 16. Now, we're isolating the y. So we need to get rid of that multiplied by 8. So we're going to divide both sides by 8. And that gives us y equals 2 over 8x minus 2. Now you do need to simplify fractions. So we know that we can divide the top and the bottom of that fraction by 2, leaving us with a quarter x minus 2. So our gradient, if we go back to the question, the gradient is the quarter, and our y-intercept is the -2. So we've got m equals a quarter, or you can write it as 0.25, and c equals -2, so our y-intercept is going to be 0, -2.